Hello and welcome to a presentation on the garden that I'll be doing for 2012. I'll be talking about the materials and assembly that are used. There are a lot of ways to do gardens, and the approach that I took was one that would allow me and my kids to be involved in the creation, assembly, and the caring of the garden, from the plants to the trellis and the fence parts. Here's a 500-foot view of the neighborhood. You can see a lot of big tree crowns there in the neighborhood. These trees are about 70 to 90 feet tall, and we get lots of leaves, which offers a ton of compost for the bin at the end of the year. Here's my place, a house with a detached garage and some maples towering over them. In the open backyard, a tree fort and swing set for the kids. And in the northeast corner, a spot for the garden. You might not see it at first, but it's there. Here's the garden area raised out in respect to the neighborhood view. This is the garden area for the plants and the compost cylinder. I try to do a lot of vertical gardening as well as minimize the amount of rework that I have to do in regards to keeping up with the weeds. I did this following what my dad had been doing the last number of years by having dirt strips instead of a dirt patch. Around the dirt strips is a perimeter fence, keeping the non-climbing critters out. My first year of gardening was in 2010. It was 24 square feet of dirt, which was composed of 2 rows that were 12 feet each. In 2011, the garden was expanded to 24 feet, increasing the grow area to 48 square feet. Now in 2012, I've expanded pretty much from the edge of the lot to the shrubs that are growing in the north central part of the backyard. I rotate where things are growing from year to year, in addition to adding compost to maximize the utility of the soil. Each of the areas or groups are tracked, again, to keep the soil at its best. So you can see how from year to year, and in 2011, 2012, how the groups follow each other by moving to the number lower than they are each year, and one always follows group number 4. Showing the garden this way, I'm showing where the various post holes are for supporting the climbing and fencing. Another reason I like dirt strips instead of the dirt patch is because I can run the lawnmower through the middle of the garden when it needs cutting, as well as service the garden whether it's wet or dry, and always have grass underfoot instead of dirt. This seems to have worked well too in keeping the weeds out of the garden for the last 2 years as well. Let's start inside the garden and talk about some of the things I've learned in the various climbing structures I've used over the past couple of years. This is the 2010 garden. I used tomato cages for the tomato plants. I had a angled retaining fence to keep the bush beans from falling into the grass. And in the back I had a rectangular modular frame for the cucumbers to climb up. As the 2010 season went on, the tomatoes grew so much and had so much fruit that the cages fell over to the north after a good windstorm. I never tried to move them back because there was so much fruit, and I figured that if I did boost the thing back up and get it straight up and down, I would only damage the plants. The cucumbers in this picture too are about 8 feet tall. The rectangular piping again that I was using there, while it never fell over, it really struggled to maintain its integrity and handle the weight from the fruit that was on there, as well as the movement that was created by the wind over the leaves. This is the last few weeks before harvest. You can see now that the cucumbers are just getting out of reach for me, and I regularly had to go out there again and push those PVC joints back together again to make sure the structure didn't fall down because of the number of cucumbers that were on there. So lessons learned from 2012. If I'm going to use wire cages, going to have a lot better support for them. And the 1.5 inch PVC that I was using to hold up the beans and the cucumbers, for the beans it was fine, but for the cucumbers, again, not a real good way. Something stronger is going to have to be used to allow them to grow that high. So we jump ahead to 2011. Using those lessons learned, I opted to get rid of the tomato cages and put in bigger PVC pipes with a heavy wire mesh. So I used 2-inch PVC that's countersunk into the ground, and then had 1.5 inch PVC sticking up into the air to hold up the wire mesh. I used stainless steel hose clamps to hold the wire mesh to the PVC pipes. The PVC pipes, I laser leveled them so that all the tops were in the same plane, so that the connections at the top would fit together nicely. And I'd started low in my markings and decided that if the stuff grew as much as it did the year before, I probably should just keep going higher and higher. So you can see some of my initial lines, and I just kept going up and up. The tops were connected with pipe to close it off so that the pipes didn't become home for bugs or maybe critters that could somehow shimmy up the wire mesh and the pipe. So the pipes in the end looked like this. And then we add the wire mesh and you get this. At the bottom, if you look carefully, you'll see that the wire mesh does not come all the way down to the ground. There's actually about 1.5 feet worth of space so that the plants can grow up, and the plants will do fine in reaching up and connecting into the mesh. What this allows you to do is to have space to do cultivation, either with a hand tool when you're getting down close to it, or if you have a long handled tool, you can get in there as well and work around without getting hooked onto the mesh itself. In the end, this proved to be a lot more climbing material than what was needed. The plants did fine in growing through the mesh and in and around it, but at the end of the season, with the pole beans I had, there was so much stuff intertwined in there. It took me a couple of hours to get that all cleaned up. So for 2012, I'm keeping the exact same piping strategy, but I'm going to use just a fraction of the mesh so that the cleanup is a lot simpler at the end of the year. In 2011, I dug 5 in-ground pipe holes and did that 2.5 feet deep with a manual post hole digger. And the good thing about it was it did a lot of muscle building for me, and the bad thing was I had a lot of hurting muscles when it was all done. It made a hole that was a lot bigger than was necessary too, but in the end it worked out fine. Backfilled and watered the backfill, and everything sunk in, and it held up everything just fine. When I was walking a number of weeks back with some counterparts at work, we were talking about gardens, and I mentioned how I was getting ready to post hole dig a whole bunch more of these things, and one of them told me about getting a good bit auger, and they were telling me these things ran between $75 and $100, and that didn't appeal to me a whole lot. And I went and checked it on eBay and kind of found the same things, and went and just looked online at some of the stores, and I saw that Lowe's had one for $15. It was only 2 feet long, and I still wanted to go 2.5 feet deep to really make these pipes solid in the ground. But I figure even if I go 2 feet, if something blows that out of the ground, it's probably some force that's very big, and I'm not going to care at that point anyway. So using an electric drill and the auger bit, made new holes, popped the pipes in the ground, pounded the tops down to earth level, and backfilled it again with soil and water, and that looked really good. Looking at a shot back from 2011. I'm just showing that the 1.5 inch pipe just really fits nicely into the 2 inch pipe in the ground. Perimeter fencing. Perimeter fencing is done using 1.25 inch PVC as the in-ground holding pipe, and then 3/4 inch PVC to make the frames that hold up whatever kind of fencing you want to have on there. I elected to use plastic poultry fencing, but you can use obviously anything that you want there. My recommendation in doing this is at minimum create all of your fence segments first, and then mark the line, if you will, that your perimeter fence will lay on. And then as you're countersinking the 1.25 inch PVC pipes, as you get toward the end, if you're either a little bit rich on pipe distance, or if you're coming up a little bit short, you can angle your pipes so that they meet nicely and that your garden is nice and closed up. You'll find that all the pipes can stay together without using PVC glue. Just leave them free and give them a good hard squeeze together. And I've had mine for 2 seasons with that now, and they've never ever come apart. The other thing that I found is in using 4-foot segments for the fences, it does a real good job of hugging the contour that you might have in your garden area there. Mine's not perfectly flat, and those 4-foot segments really do a great job to keep to the ground. And the other question that some people have asked me is, hey, how about those fence segments? You know, some of them lean out a little bit more than the others, and there's, you know, a little bit of space where things could get through. And I've never had anything go through there. And if I get, you know, a rabbit or some other, you know, non-climbing critter that sees that and jumps in, well, they're welcome to come into the garden at that point. The other thing that's nice with the setup here is when it's time to cut the lawn, I literally just will lift the fence segments out, move them off to the side. I can cut right over the top of where the countersunk PVC pipe chunks are that hold up everything else, and mow over that, and when I'm done, just pop all the stuff right back in. It works out really good. At the end of the season, less the dirt strips that you've got, you just pull the stuff out and put it away in your garage, or, you know, put it someplace where it's out of the way. It's not going to rust. It's very light, and it works really, really, really good. The other thing that I wanted to share is that my experience of putting these fence segments in, it doesn't kill off the grass. The grass will actually learn how to grow around the pipes, and the only thing that you'll see is the I guess indentation that the pipe sort of makes on the ground. But after a couple of weeks of the garden being taken out, the grass will start growing straight again. Pest control. We get lots of the nasty Asian beetles here, and they chow on the beans. And the first year, I just let them do their thing, and they really do a lot of damage to the leaves. And I don't know how much they took away, if any, in the yield that I got from the beans the first year. But I decided I'm going to build a trap because there's plenty of them around, and the fact that I draw a few more in isn't going to really make a difference, and maybe I can actually eliminate some of them. The trap that I made is a variation of somebody else's trap that they had put up onto YouTube. The construction is really simple. A 4-inch PVC pipe and a 2-liter bottle at the bottom with some holes punched in it so water and stuff can go through it as the catch system. Using the existing pipe supports that we had talked about earlier for the vertical piping, I just attach using a larger hose clamp. I just attached the 4-inch pipe to the 1.5-inch pipe, and I made mine taller just because of the kids, and I didn't want them to have an easy time reaching up and getting at that bait. At the top of the 4-inch pipe, all you're going to do is cut 2 perpendicular lines several inches in there to hold the plastic pieces that hold the bait. So you more or less make an X or a plus in there. Mount the plastic cards that come with the bait, and then mount the bait on there. And as soon as you mount that bait, if those bugs are there, they will be there. The picture that I took of the bait itself, I took about 15 seconds after I had opened the bait up, and not another 15 seconds after that, I had 3 of those bugs in the trap already. If you saw the earlier picture where I was doing tomato cages and the small pipes making the rectangular structure to hold up the cucumbers, you'll see that using the larger pipes and the metal mesh just allowed for a lot more height and gives you options really to train where you want those growths to go. And if you have plants that grow even higher than, let's say, 7-8 feet, you can always just add on by putting another connection onto the PVC pipes. And if you want to go 12-15 feet because you have plants that grow that way and you enjoy harvesting on ladders or something, you can go ahead and do that. So that is it. If you're just getting started as I am on gardening, I hope this information's been helpful. I'll put a comment or a link somehow into YouTube with the plans that you've been seeing throughout the video so that you can download that for yourself. And I try to do updates 1 or 2 times a month just to share what's going on in my garden and how things are growing there, as well as the composting. I've been getting more into that now as well, and we'll start sharing more with that as I learn more and have things that would be good to share. We'll brew a batch during the summer here, or a few batches of compost tea as well, and I'll actually show you how I used that last year, and it really made a difference on some grass actually in the neighbor's yard here, and just really made some lazy grass perk up and start growing really nice.